Well, howdy. Yes, I am CharLee Simons, host of Do Not Talk, talking about two things you're never supposed to talk about: religion and politics. And we're going next level. It's been very exciting with the show, watching the growth, and had another show just recently posted on Rumble's Editor's Picks, which is fantastic. One of the shows got almost 104,000 views because it became an editor's pick. And so the channel is growing, rumble.com/do not talk. It's the conservatives' answer to YouTube, where we have a free speech platform and they don't delete and they don't take stuff down unless, of course, it's dangerous and awful stuff, and go for it. But other than that, it's not like YouTube. But it doesn't monetize like YouTube either, because they're just not as big. YouTube is huge. It's a behemoth owned by Google. I've had many shows deleted off of YouTube because I talked about things that, well, it's not acceptable to talk about the COVID and the fact that it was such a scam. It's not acceptable to talk about election fraud. It's not acceptable to talk about pedophilia. On YouTube, they have to use their little code words. They can't even say pedophile. They can't even say pedophilia. They can't say any of that. They have to blank it out or use little code words. Screw that. I don't let the left dictate the English language for me. And I bring that word up in particular because of the guest I have on. Her name is Sheila Matthews with Able Child, ablechild.org. Very powerful message. This is going to be a powerful show. And if you have any experience with it, or it's in your history and your past, first of all, I'm very sorry. There's great healing through Christ Jesus if you just give your life to him. There's a peace beyond all understanding that he promises in his word, God's word, a peace beyond all understanding. But you got to reach out, you got to ask, you have to knock, and the door will be open. Seek and you will find. We have not because we ask not. So reach out to the Father and you'll get amazing healing in ways you didn't even expect. And we have to learn to forgive. And that's a requirement. We're not forgiven unless we forgive. You realize that? It's very clear in the word. And many of us don't. We're still harboring resentment or hurts from the past, and we're still angry. I speak from experience. And I had to actually ask the Lord, reveal to me people that I've not forgiven that I should. And of course, I have to look at myself too. What did I do? How did I bring that on? What could I have done differently? So I'm sure that's going to be part of the discussion today with Sheila Matthews. And I'm looking forward to meeting her and having her on. And I'm glad you're here. It's not by accident. And I'm also glad that we've been getting some support and help from people who are watching the show and sharing it. When you share this show, when you comment, if I could ask you right now, wherever you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or rumble.com/do not talk. If you can just take a quick second and hit that like button, click that and comment. If you comment, that it all breaks down those algorithms that seem to be dead set against conservatives and anyone on the right in the internet. You got to break the algorithms. And you do that by helping all of us, the alternative media folks, by liking the shows, commenting on them, sharing them. Sharing them is huge. So thank you for that. And if you want to help financially, people are doing that now too, which has been very exciting. This little QR code right here, that takes you to venmo.com/do not talk, venmo.com/do not talk. Buy me a cup of coffee or a tank of gas, whatever. Buy me a whole new computer system. That'd be extraordinary. And we got a Give, Send, Go page now too. GiveSendGo.com/do not talk. GiveSendGo.com/do not talk. Let's take a look a little bit at what ablechild.org is all about.
I just want to say that I do not think for 1 minute that schools need additional psychologists. I mean, additional funding going to psychologists who push disorders and push medication? I don't think so.
To hold these children in a facility like Riverview, in locked conditions, force drugged, restrained, needs to be completely abandoned.
If I didn't have family members who were willing to financially back me and my son's cause, it is entirely possible that my son would have ended up in a psychiatric ward. Parents are told that their child has a chemical imbalance or a neurobiological illness. We risk our child's life based on this fundamental lie.
Candace's death entirely was avoidable. The blood of these children is on your hands.
You cannot continue to dismiss our reports, for we are in the tens of thousands.
So what do you want Congress to do here?
I want an investigation into the correlation between the psychiatric drugs and the school shooters.
Amy Philo of Frisco is launching a crusade against the Mothers Act.
The more women who go on these drugs, the more we're going to see more mothers committing suicide and homicide.
No one, not the FDA, not the pharmaceutical corporations, had the right to make those choices for us.
People have the right to not believe in the psychiatric industry.
They're not trying to help mothers. They're trying to drug mothers, and that's not the solution.
It's an intimidation tactic to get parents, to coerce parents to medicate.
And there's no accountability from the drug company or the mental health industry.
And other parents, I know it's happened to, and I know that they've got to speak up. They've got to come forward.
You as the parent, stand tall for your child. Be there. Don't let anybody influence you. And certainly don't let anybody try to change your child into somebody that they're not.
The enemy targets children. It's not an accident. It's not by mistake. The enemy targets children, Sheila Matthews. Welcome to Do Not Talk. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much for your courage, and I really appreciate being on your podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that. And it's an honor to have you because of the work that you've been doing. And I can only imagine the targeting that you have had against you from very powerful people with a whole lot of money, power, and influence who want to shut you up and shut you down. When you start protecting children, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing the Lord's work. As I talked early in the, just at the very beginning of the show, the pedophilia, the grooming, the sexual crap that's going on that they're bringing into and influencing lives, that's scarring them emotionally, and the drugging. I was considered I was a special kid. I was ADHD before they knew what ADHD was. And I'm sure they would have loved to put me on any number of medications because I was so hyperactive. And then they figured out, oh, he's like really super smart. And he's bored to death in the classroom. So he needs some special programs. And at the time, there was this MGM, Mentally Gifted Minds. And I thrived. It changed everything. Changed my world, changed my life, changed my childhood. I thank God for that. But now it's like, oh no, we can't be giving any kind of special attention to kids who need to advance above and beyond what we're normally allowed to teach in schools and public education, which I think has become absolutely the worst. And California proves it again and again and again, as we have the lowest test scores now really in the nation for our children in public schools. It's so bad and so sad. And it's shut up, sit down, and we'll medicate you if you don't comply. And forcing parents to, but look what they're willing to put into their kids, Sheila. I'll never forget, children are not susceptible to the COVID virus, the COVID-19 at least. It was not targeting children. It was not really hurting them or affecting them. But yet they came out with one for 6 months old and older. And how many parents were lining up to, jab that crap and, oh, I don't know what's in it, but put it in my kid. Because the media told me to. And my neighbors told me to. And everybody said I had to because we're all doing it. Look at the results of it. It's insane, Sheila. You're talking about even above and beyond. How many vaccines are children required to attend public schools now? Do you know?
I don't know. My issue really is the psychiatric drugging. And I could tell you that there's so many children on a combination of drugs. It's called a polypharmacy, and it's never been tested on human beings. So we have children as young as a year old on multiple psychiatric drugs through Medicaid. Those numbers have recently become public. And when you're talking about the school, it's in the 1970s, the Association of School Psychology was allowed into our school system. And we're here to help is what they said. And they decided to change all the way they identified children. And the program that you talk about is really interesting because the checklist for the ADHD child is very similar to that as the gifted child. So they're basing this off behaviors. And my organization was named after President Eisenhower's able child. And basically, he wanted to encourage children to be gifted in reading and writing and arithmetic and social skills and to serve their country. And those grants along the way were diverted into mental health grants. And these children's identities were stolen. And it is a theft of the highest order that we're talking about because we are damaging the souls of these children. And with no evidence, there are millions of children that are falsely accused of having attention deficit disorder based on no science. There's no science behind it. There's no brain scan. There's no blood test. There's no anything to determine whether you have this or not. So it is a fraud, and it's a dangerous fraud because when I started, I raised two boys, and my son was 7 at the time when I tuned in and a miracle happened to me, and I saw a mother by the name of Patricia Weathers testifying before Congress, and it was shown in that video. And I had this moment of clarity that I was meeting with my school the next day. I called Congress. I got her number. I reached out to her and she said, "Sheila, I don't know you. I'm just another mother, but do not put your child on these psychiatric drugs. Tell them you don't believe in it." And I did, and it changed my life. I protected my son, and then we joined forces to create Able Child to protect other parents and children.
How much of the health problems we're seeing in so many children and allergies and so on and so forth are attributed to two things? It's so funny you mentioned this. There's no scientific way to even label a kid having attention deficit when maybe they're just a kid. But how much of it is diet and these drugs that they're pumping into children now, all these vaccines and so on?
Well, I could tell you that the drugs in combination, like I said, they've never been tested. But Risperdal actually in young boys developed, the boys were developing breasts and heavy. They were becoming very heavy. And so I know that one of our board members took on that case of males growing breasts from Risperdal and some of the other psychiatric drugs. They're horrific. These drugs cause heart damage. Ritalin is in the same category as cocaine. And so we have the Berkeley study where the Berkeley study said that these are gateway drugs to addiction. And basically the DEA used to give out a pamphlet to schools and to parents saying, these methylphenidate, which is Ritalin and Adderall and so on and so on, they used to help. The DEA, Department of Drug Enforcement, used to care about this issue. They used to control it. They used to oversee it, and that no longer happens. So the children are suffering. There's a black box suicide warning on it that increases the risk of suicide. So they actually induce suicide. So we are giving children drugs that cause them to commit suicide. And then the mental health industry uses the numbers of these children's death, of the suicides, and advocates for more spending through the lawmakers. We have a crisis on our hands. These kids are killing themselves. We need more money. And so they're using the same children that they victimized to gain access to these mental health grants. It's a human rights crisis. It's not a mental health crisis. It's the worst form of abuse that we can see, where they are producing marketing material to us all, hand feeding it to us. And you know what? The parents, in defense of a parent who I was faced with this, they are being given false data. And we know about false gods, right? We're being told that our children suffer from a chemical imbalance that they cannot measure. And so on one hand, they're lying to us. And then on the other hand, they're telling us the only solution is you need to medicate your child. I was actually told that if I did not medicate my child would self-medicate. And so it's a big lie. It's a disgrace that we don't hold the industry of psychiatry accountable. These psychiatrists in these mass killings, which I work on across the country, are walking away after treatment of these killers. Their names aren't mentioned. They don't lose their licenses. Nobody knows who's behind the curtain. And they walk away to treat another innocent person looking for help when they're in a crisis.
Did you see that video of the mother being told by the child's doctor that if she did not put this child on this psychotropic drug, right? Is that the right word? Psychotropic? I'm just a good old boy from Bakersfield. I don't know all these terms. That if she did not allow him to put her child on this drug, that he was going to call Child Protective Services. Did you see it?
I did. I just saw that yesterday, and I'm alarmed that it's still happening. It's very prevalent in the state of Connecticut. I've done a lot of work with people in foster care that these threats are coming from these doctors who usually have contracts with the state. So they have these big mental behavioral health grants, and their industry is worth billions of dollars. And they wield this power over the parent that says, no, I don't want this, to threaten them and cause the state to intervene and hammer them with compliance. And it's awful. It's a violation of informed consent. It's going to continue to happen until we force these lawmakers to address it.
And they're not. They're absolutely not. Even still, there's so many other things they're taking care of right now. And thank God things are, I believe, changing and rapidly. But the whole talking about kids and what they're doing to children seems to be going by the wayside as they're concentrating on so many other things. And that's, I think, is unfortunate, because that's where we should be starting, is what the schools are doing to children.
Mm-hmm. Well, we just got back. Able Child just got back from Wyoming. And I have to tell you, the lawmakers there held a hearing. You could find the hearing on our website. We just are starting to write it, but we just got back. And these lawmakers were thirsty for information. And in the audience was the lobbyists for the other side, the hospital associations, CVS lobbyist, the drug company lobbyist, and they were angry. And the Speaker of the House said, you must be over the target. And I really, truly believe that we are going to start to see some reforms in the next 4 years with Secretary Kennedy now in HHS.
Oh, thank God. I know. That's going to be fantastic. I love what he's doing. And like I mentioned earlier about diet, just what they're feeding children, and parents don't seem to put a correlation between, I'm putting a bowl of flavored and artificially colored cereal in front of them and can't figure out why they're all jacked up the rest of the day and screwed up. So much of it is diet. And well, we're going to fix that. We're not going to tell you that you actually need to feed your kids better, because we don't know what your situation is. So we'll take over that too. We'll feed them, and we'll decide what's best for them. You just let us take care of them from cradle to grave.
That's what pharma does. Cradle to grave.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
And you get them started early, and then you got a patient for the rest of your life, or the rest of their life, shortened life.
Yes.
The big pharma is. Are there any good pharmaceutical companies that you can think of?
Well, I think I would say this. There are some really life-saving drugs, and they're produced by multiple pharmaceutical companies, life-saving drugs. I believe the lifestyle drugs are something we should be looking at, which is the diet, the change sex, that the depression drugs, the ADHD. That's all lifestyle in what I see and what I
not life's changing, it's personality changing.
Yeah, but I think we do have to get to the root causes. I would support the pharmaceutical companies being built and developing drugs here in the United States versus China. At least you have a better grip on some of the drugs, and you can see how they're being produced. We have MedWatch, which is it's the aftermarket safety drug system for consumers. I would like to see that marketed through every state public health departments, where they have to tell consumers, if you have an adverse event, you need to report it to us. Because what the FDA is supposed to do, but they're conflicted with conflict of interest, is what they're supposed to do is take that data and regulate the drug companies. So if the consumers don't know that MedWatch exists, how can the consumer report side effects? We have to make it where you, like up here for your donation button, I love that on your website, is that yes, please, we all need support because we're the ones on the outside, but they should have a QR code that consumer could just link on and have, right?
There's no money in that, Sheila. There's no money in that.
Well, you know what? It might. I thought that way too, but there's plenty of money to do beautiful things for our people in this country. And if we take it back from those who are wasting it and killing us, right, then we can take that money and be in the golden age of this, like the president says. But without the access to the money, the government is giving it to the wrong people. So either you stop doing it, put it back in the American people's pocket. I don't take state or federal money. I go by donations through our website, and we just paid for because of our donors, we were able to go to Wyoming because the people paid for our trip.
Because right now, yeah, the politicians, I don't hear them talking about it, except for Robert Kennedy Jr. But other than that, I don't hear politicians talking about it at all. And I just wonder how many of them are getting a little kickback here and there. How many of them are getting a little extra donation from Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson to shut up.
Yes. And also the biggest tell for your audience going forward is when the president, any party, talks about negotiating lower drug costs. Don't listen to that. Listen to drug safety. Do you want a drug that you can afford that isn't safe? Or do you want safe drugs? Of course, we want lower prices, but you need to address drug safety first, because we're killing our own people. And that's something you can't get your life back. You could always get money from different, even if you beg on the street, somebody might give you $1. But I have to tell you, you're not going to get your life back. So drug safety is what we should be talking about, not negotiating drug prices.
President Trump. I know he watches this show all the time. He loves my show. President Trump, would you please rescind that whole thing about protecting the drug companies from lawsuits? Would you please take that away? I loved Ronald Reagan. That was the very first president I ever got to vote for. He was extraordinary, but why did he do that? Why did he do that? What prompted that to make them exempt from any kind of legal action to be taken against them, putting horrific drugs out for us to consume?
Well, they're jointly connected with the government now. So the government is funding big pharma. So they don't want the government. You have a hard time suing the government. And I know that Secretary Kennedy has been active in that before he came in. I don't even know if the answer is suing. Able Child's been around for 20
Not
years.
suing, just consequences.
Yes,
I want some consequences.
I totally agree. And I do believe that the money that has been recovered from the pharmaceutical industry, especially through the state of Connecticut on false marketing by then Attorney General Blumenthal, never made it back to the victims. So I don't know where the money goes. I think it goes right back into the politicians' pocket. I worked closely in I gave a senator at the time, Attorney General Blumenthal, inside documentation from a Zoloft case from Woody Matters, and she lost her husband. She gave me the inside documents from that lawsuit, and I provided it to the Attorney General in the state of Connecticut. And he sued, won, but where did all that money go? It certainly didn't go to help the foster care children that are on a cocktail of these drugs. It's all access. It's never to get the consumer an exit plan safely off these drugs. Like you said, once you're on them, you are cradle to grave.
Most likely. Yeah. Unless you do something about it, unless somebody intervenes and interjects, and the true victims are children. They can't do anything to fight back against what's being done to them, and that's why we have to step up even more diligent in our protection of children in all ways and in every way. And I'm no Karen. I don't get involved in people's lives. I'd rather go, listen, I think that's probably a poor choice on your part, but you might want to rethink it, but I'm not going to tell you have to. But when it comes to children, I'm a pit bull, sister. I grab on or I don't let go. You're not going to do this to children anymore. And I don't care what the cost is. I'm not going to stop. So when I found out about you all and what you're doing, this is fantastic, because this is affecting all of our futures.
Well, it doesn't matter what religion, what color, where you are from. It's happening. Our prisons are filled with young men who haven't learned to read and write. It's a rail to jail, these Ritalin for our men. We're losing men. I raised 2 sons, and we are losing. Our men are incarcerated in this country, and a lot of it is these psychiatric drugs, and then they're feeding them in these cages. And obviously they're linked to violence. A suicide is a violent act. You murder yourself. It's a crime. It's not a mental illness. It's a crime when you kill yourself. We can feel sorry for you, but we want to look at your records to see if the psychiatrist gave you informed consent, if the psychiatrist didn't coerce you and say, your child's not going to come back to this school unless he's on these drugs. We need those records. We need to look at those records. And in order to do that, we have to pass new laws, because they are sitting at the Capitol, they meaning the lobbyists for the drug companies. And there's only one small able child in this country. And I could tell you, when I go into the state Capitol, there's for every senator, there's 2 and 3 pharmaceutical and psychiatric lobbyists. So they're writing our laws and they're taking away our liberty. And so I just really want people to wake up to the fact that when you hear about these mass killings, and this mother who killed her 4 children and then killed herself in Wyoming, she was being treated by the psychiatric industry. They haven't named the psychiatrist. The police investigation has stopped. They have said, she was mentally ill.
And that's that.
And then that's it. And then the governor of Wyoming wants to fund more of it. We need to double down on mental health. Really? Why can't we hold them accountable? And, to your point, these children don't have informed consent. If your child's on a cocktail of psychiatric drugs, a young boy that's looking out the window, doesn't like the class, doesn't like the teacher, maybe needs some discipline, okay, is from a bad family, you put them on these drugs, they no longer can serve in our military. So we now have definitely a crisis, a security issue in this country. So it's serious, my friend.
Let's talk about the school shootings by other kids. There's two dominant, when you look at percentages, media is not reporting on it again. But that one is a sexual confusion, a gender confusion. Many of them call themselves trans. And there's a consistent number of them who are on these kind of drugs you're talking about, these mood altering drugs and so on, even antidepressants. A 14, 13, 15-year-old on antidepressants. And they're snapping and they're taking out other kids. They're bringing guns to school. Look what's been going on. This has been happening for a few years. Media shuts up, then report on this stuff.
Well, the closest we are right now is in the state of Tennessee. We have Able Child's working with another, actually, she used to work for Reform Pharma under Robert Kennedy Jr.'s nonprofit organization. So we've teamed up in Tennessee, and they blocked the records of Audrey Hale that killed I think it was, actually, it's not, that was the one in Florida. She killed the classmates. Just can't remember how many children she killed. I think 9. Anyway, basically, we know she was treated. We know that Vanderbilt was actually, some of their very questionable transition experimental surgeries were closed down. They sealed the records. I'm still trying to get the psychiatric file number 46 that has been suppressed by the media. Then they gain lawyers, and then they go, and they're a Tennessee Star by Michael Patrick Leahy has been reporting on that case. We're very close. We're pressing on that every day. For the last year, we had a bill and it was killed by TBI, which is the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, because we didn't want the behavioral health industry to be working with the FBI to gather the evidence, because they're in that industry. So you have a psychiatrist that's saying, well, we're going to help collect the data. So it's almost like having, the gun industry, who's been really under attack and blamed for all these killings. It's like having them do the ballistics report. Yeah. It's like, you don't want the drug manufacturers involved in training the police on stigma for mental health. And this is what's happening in Tennessee. It's a mess. It's a conflict of interest. And so the hormones and the hormonal treatments in combinations with, I think she was on transitioning drugs, and then on a boatload of psychiatric drugs. And they're sealing this. They're saying we can't give this out to the public.
Who are they protecting? Why would they seal that?
They were protecting Vanderbilt and all the transitional trans surgeries. And then there's certainly protecting the school. And then they're also protecting the pharmaceutical companies. So it's a combination of all these interests. And
why? It's my favorite question. Why? What's making them protect these different industries and groups?
Okay, well, when I worked on Sandy Hook, the mass killing in the state of Connecticut in Newtown, We sued the state of Connecticut for Adam Lanza's mental health records. And the assistant attorney general said to the FOIA judge we were in front of, if we give Able Child this information, a lot of people will stop taking their medications. So they are afraid that people are going to stop utilizing pharmaceutical antidepressants to deal with their depression, to deal with any focus issues. And it is very dangerous, and your audience should know that it is very dangerous to go off these psychiatric drugs without the oversight of a doctor, because you have to wean off very slowly.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sheila, like any drug, you have to wean yourself off of it. Yes, including you mentioned Zoloft. You can't just stop taking it. You go through withdrawals. Things happen, bad things jacks you up. You got to wean yourself off or be weaned off of it. And that's the same thing, isn't it now?
Yeah. And think about it. They're in our schools. I mean, they pressure the president. President Biden basically passed a bill that wanted all mental health treatment centers in all schools. And in Vermont, a young girl came home with a bag of Zoloft with no warning on it. It was taken out of the packaging, and the father called the school. I wrote about that, and I worked on that, picking it up off of a national news story. But think about the combination of children in foster care that are basically on a combination of these drugs.
They're giving them medication at schools, and I thought that was illegal, without letting the parents know that they're giving them these different psychiatric drugs. How are they doing that? How is that even legal?
Well, you have the Association of School Psychology that's in there, and they are an arm of the pharmaceutical companies. So parents aren't even aware. We can blame parents, and there are bad parents. Give you that. And parenting school is a lot easier than getting people on psych drugs. We have parents who are very uneducated themselves that could use support in real life math and just support in how do we get you to a place where you can function and be a parent. But most of the information, to get back to your point, is slanted, and it is produced by the pharmaceutical companies itself.
How many of these parents actually enjoy putting their kids into a comatose state so they don't have the behavioral problems at home to deal with?
Yeah, it's really scary. I think some of these parents are really frightened, because what happens is that all these other side effects happen, and then they end up in the emergency room, and they don't, like my co-founder of Able Child, she didn't recognize her son anymore. He attacked her physically. She drove by the playground, and she saw her son shuffling his feet in the corner, and away from all the other kids. I mean, these are powerful mind-altering drugs. It's really scary.
Who knows what it's doing to you long term?
Oh yeah, there is no long-term studies of these. I mean, there's studies, and then they take it and they say we don't have enough access. They have 100% access to our children in our public school systems through the Association of School Psychology. It's a monopoly. There's no other organization that's allowed in there. Trust me, if I went down to my local school and I said, I want to set up an office in here, I don't get any federal or state funding, but I want to give people informed consent, you think they'd let me in? They wouldn't,
No,
so it's really very sad where we are.
It's a concerted effort to take parents out of the mix altogether.
I agree.
Of having any say with the children. Here in California, it's horrific what they've done to parents who are trying to protect their children. I know that you've been targeted. I just know you have. You don't do the kind of work that you're doing and not have powerful people, rich, wealthy people coming after you because they want you to shut you down or shut you up. Can you think of any, or can you share with us ways that you've been targeted?
Well, when I worked on Sandy Hook in the state of Connecticut, we were followed throughout our work on the ground there. I could tell you that I know that I've been on radio shows like the Joe Hoff show where I had a FOIA request in for data from Sandy Hook and the police corruption there. And they told me it would take 4 years to get my FOIA filled. I was on the air with Joe Hoff talking about that. And when I got off the air, I opened my email and the FOIA request was right in my email. So I do believe that I'm monitored. I do believe that my mic is often shut off at behavioral health oversight committees.
Oh, I'll bet.
You know, I try to speak up and they'll cut my mic off. Recently in Connecticut, they closed down all public comments because of my work in the 5 minutes that the public gets in the beginning of the meeting. And I was asking them, where's the data on the psychiatric drugs? Where is the data? Are you telling people that they could get addicted? Are you telling them that they could commit suicide? And my mic was cut off. So yeah, I get that quite a bit. You know,
your personal life, though, you haven't had any. I hope not.
No, I'm really blessed. I really am that I'm close to Jesus. I feel like if anything happens, it's really, I only always turn to him. I've had people try to infiltrate my organization. I've had people try to lead me astray. I've had people say horrible things about me, but I have to say, I just always trust in God. It's the best teammate ever. So I'm really blessed.
You're doing the Lord's work. Jesus was very clear about what's going to happen to anybody who messes with kids.
Yeah. And
you're doing the Lord's work.
I do believe that, you know, I've been granted this, you know, when God opens a door, nobody else can shut it. And I truly believe that. I don't really care if you're the president, if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I don't really get into the politics of that. I mean, I have my own personal likes and dislikes, but I persevere. I'm like, I don't care what party you're with. And I don't care how famous you are. You put your pants on just like we all do. You know, sometimes I get nervous. I get more nervous in front of, you know, going to Wyoming. Am I going to take too much time? Am I going to like, is somebody going to hear me and say, I want to support her. I want to continue this work. And so I pray for that. I pray that the children no longer get misidentified, because I really think that it's such a crime that they don't get to live these full lives because they've been their identity has been hijacked at such a young age. You know, it's to me, we have a war within this country. And I love the name of your show. You know, it's just perfect. You know, it's like, you have to speak up. You know, for me, it's been a passion and purpose. And I think that if you live that kind of life, then you're graced with a lot of other gifts that you might not have had.
You would have to be protected, and thank God for, as I said earlier, the peace beyond all understanding that the word promises through God's Holy Spirit. If we just ask for it, you'd have to have that, because otherwise you'd be so angry all the time. And I have to battle that because I get so angry.
Sometimes I get really disappointed when so much could be going right, and then one person will say a negative comment like, oh, you could have done this better. And I'm like, oh my God. Then I find myself focusing on that. And then I've learned to
we all do that.
You know, shut that voice off, because
one negative comment can ruin your whole day. Yeah, if you let it.
And that's human. That's being human, you know. Yeah. I mean, I've lost a lot in my life. I made a conscious decision to focus on this, and I've had some losses personally because of that. But looking back, I wouldn't have picked a different path. You know, I think I did the right thing.
I love that you went to Wyoming. I love that you're able to go before the legislature and say, hey, you might want to start looking at this and thinking about this and focusing on this and ending this, what's going on. But that's, we got 49 states to go. It's That's a huge undertaking, sister. And I'm glad you got a team with you and behind you. And I pray that they're effective. Please, Father, make them effective in your name, Lord Jesus. Make them greatly effective for you.
Thank you. Amen.
It's got to be daunting when we have so much against us, including an entire public education system and teachers unions, who I really believe that's two things. One, much of the left, and I don't trust teachers anymore at all. Every time I talk about this, I get angry people going, "Well, there's some good teachers. There's basically good teachers." No, they were fired. They were fired because they wouldn't take the shot. All the people that are in those positions now are people who are just ready, willing, and able to let their whole, sorry, conspiracy theory CharLee comes out, one world government, new world order thing come in, where we've got to, first of all, decrease the population. So we'll tell everybody they're trans. They'll do all these transitioning drugs and get these surgeries so we make sure they never procreate. Mm-hmm. I really believe it's down to that simple of an argument in their minds, their sick, twisted, demented minds. And the other is, I think that they like putting these kids on drugs. Obviously, they don't care about test scores. It's not affecting their job at all. That they're putting out, again, California last in the nation with test scores, but yet spending more money on education than any other state. Dismal failure. And then we have groups that are giving, like our governor, lovingly call him Governor Hairdo, went to Washington, D.C. to accept an award from some kind of big education department for excellence in education. It was so ludicrous. It was so ludicrous. I couldn't believe it. I was stunned by the whole thing. And I thought, there's some powerful things going on, and it's all targeting children. It's all the basic targeting children. Start there. You get their minds, you get their bodies, you get their way of thinking the way you want it to be, and you can destroy an entire nation in just a generation or two. That's Communist Manifesto stuff.
Well, I always think of David and Goliath. The more, sometimes the action, it gets so suppressive, and sometimes it needs to get to that level where you have this small opposition that takes the whole thing down. And I've sat by for the last 20 years and, have seen no progress. I've seen little. I've seen lawmakers who are so afraid they can't. Oh, I want to do something. I've heard that. Really want to do something, and then they don't. And you shake your head like, why would you not want to help these children? But it's the nature of man, and I think that we're all, in every industry there's good and bad people. I truly believe that. But it's when good people do nothing, and that's not a quote from me. I think in Wyoming, though, I was so blessed that because they were hungry for this information, and I'm really confident that Wyoming might be a leader and can show the other states. And yeah, there's a lot of them. We've been invited to Nebraska and Montana. So it's really amazing, and some of these connections were on the way to my meeting, just God moments, which, are, if you get passionate enough about life and about the Lord, because they want you to believe in this checklist that has no science behind it, but here's Jesus Christ that has an abundance of evidence, and you see that in your life when you start to follow him. And I'm not a big holy roller, but I just prefer the faith lived life. It's just so less scary. At the end of this movie, we all die. So it's like, we have to figure out what's going to help the next person, are people that are coming after us, So I'm hopeful. I like David and Goliath's story. And that's what I kind of look. If I looked at the whole picture, I don't think I would have done this. I didn't know what I was up against, so I don't think I would have done it if somebody said, you're up against the drug companies and the psychiatric industry, and all the politicians are getting paid by them.
And the teachers' unions.
Right. And so I just don't think I would have, I wouldn't have picked this door. But God has a way. It's like with childbirth, you have your first child, you're like, I'm never doing this again.
Never gonna do that again.
I'm not doing that again. And, so there's this built-in forgetter. And so
built-in forgetter, you said?
Yeah, built-in forgetter.
I like that. I've heard that from many, many women. At the time, it's just the worst thing ever. Never going to do this again. This is horrible. What am I doing? And then afterwards, it all goes away. And they forget the pain. They forget all the turmoil as they're holding that child and looking in that kid's eyes. Changes everything. And thank the Lord for that. But where do you go from here? Wyoming, Nebraska, Montana? Do you have a day job? Are you trying to keep a career going on top of all this?
I'm a realtor in 2 states. So I'm very active really in Florida here. I do have my license in Connecticut, but I am always diverted to able child. I get called every time I walk away and I say, oh my God, I just can't do this today, or I can't do this. I want a little more of a social life, or I want to focus on my home. I'll get a call from somebody and God will drag me right back into it. So it's like, I've tried, there were a couple of years where I was on the back burner and, watching the mass killings and then watching the gun industry not look at the ballistic reports of these crime scenes. I worked on the assassination in Butler and found out that the shooter can't be tied to that body on the rooftop. I mean, it's interesting work. And so I do like doing it, and it definitely keeps me busy. But I have a great family, and I'm blessed with a mother in her 90s. So I take care of her when I'm not enjoying my children and life, So I'm ablechild.org is here for the people, and we're grateful for you, and we pray for you, and we hope that people see your QR code up there and they donate to you. And your favorite person, I hope he's listening, President Trump, and I hope he hears what I say, which is, don't worry so much about the drug prices, worry about the drug safety. Then we can talk about the prices.
And let's rescind that whole ruling of making them to where they're not accountable for the crap that they're putting out there and into us.
Yes.
And to we the people stop automatically thinking that pharmacy is going to be fixing all your problems, especially with your children. Please don't do that anymore. What can we do to help besides ablechild.org? Definitely, that's a great start and a great place to go. And I hope you'll go there.
Yes, I hope so. ablechild.org. We have a petition, which I'll put back on the front of our website. I need 10,000 signatures to get a federal hearing on the link between psychiatric drugs and school shootings and this violence. We just had a second of its kind hearing in Wyoming. I'd like to see this on a national level, so I don't have to go state by state. I would love that. I mean, but states are powerful, independent places where you do have to support them. So that petition, spread the word, tell a parent that if they have any questions about what the school is saying about their child, to come to ablechild.org. So spread our articles around, talk to people, and support us financially. I always hate to ask for money, but we need it. We just used donations to go to Wyoming. And now I'm going to, I just put up an article. This is what we've achieved. I'm very mindful of how I spend your money. So I look forward to getting some donations and to ask, like you said, God wants us to ask for this. So I'm praying that He makes me useful, and I hear His words.
Yeah, effective. An honor and a privilege, and count on me. Anything I can do to help, just a simple text, and I'll be there for you. Okay.
Will do. It's been a joy to meet you. God
Yeah, I
bless
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you. He does. He has. He will, and right back at you.
Thank you.
I hope you will get involved, and thank you to everybody who was talking to each other in the chat room there. Thank you very much. I forgot to ask any of the questions that you were right in there, but I do that. I do that a lot. Maybe I need to be on some kind of psychiatric drug to. No, kidding. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America, but most importantly, America bless God.